Hello guys, and welcome back to yet another episode of TSBEC TV. You join me here today on a hot summer's day in Denmark, where I've got my Discovery 2 parked outside. We recently just fitted this Hyena front winch bumper, looking really nice. But there's one thing that bothered me for quite some time driving this car around. That is, it's got absolutely no power from stock. So that is what we're going to take the car inside today. I'm going to explain what's going to happen, but it definitely involves more power, more diesel, more air, more pressure, and bigger turbo. So we've now got the car on the lift and just pulled the engine oil plug and drained it all out, because we will be fitting new oil, new filters, and that is because this is the reason for it, more power. This is the Turbo Technics VNT Turbo. It's called the S208B. This is, as I said, a VNT Turbo, which means the actuator sits here. You've got small vanes inside of the exhaust housing, which means it's quite a bit bigger compared to the old one. Which just in terms means that it can make more pressure at lower RPMs, and also of course making more pressure because it's just a tiny bit bigger, better made than the standard one. It does cost quite a bit of money, but I think it's worth it. Now, prior to fitting this, you do need a big intercooler, you need the EGR blanked off, you need silencer removed because you need to get more flow through it. This will produce quite a bit more flow. And of course also a remap to do it. And for the remap, of course, we've gone with Storm Tuning. Daniel, really nice guy. So, with that, in the kit, you get the turbo itself. Here it is. You get this small box here, a boost box, I think people call it. But we'll be fitting a bigger sensor from Bosch onto the engine itself, because this pretty much just tricks the ECU into thinking you're not making overboosts, which then will go in and put the engine power down. So this kind of just trips and says, yeah, you're fine, even though you're running at much higher boost level. Getting a sensor like this, which Daniel at Storm Tuning can also supply, you just plug this in and it can go up to a higher level, and the engine ECU knows exactly what kind of boost levels you're running. So this was in the kit. If you don't want to splice this into your stock system, you can get one of these through Daniel, the Bosch map sensor is called. And you get a gasket kit here. You get the downpipe onto the manifold itself, you get the drain, and you get the top bit here for the oil feed pipe. As well, get a nice little piece of paper here saying who packed it, who checked it through. You need to get a bigger oil feed pipe here, as the turbo is a bit differently in the size, so it needs to go a bit longer. You get the studs, the bolts, an extra one. Actually, I got two of these in the kit now. That's always nice. And you get a piece of paper here telling you what turbo technicians, who they are, what they do, how long they've been doing it for. You get a manual saying how you should install your new turbo, what to be sure of doing the service and all that. And you get a small piece of paper here saying who looked over your turbo, who built it from the factory and up and checked it and made through all the tests. In this case, the builder is JP and the inspector is DN. They checked up, everything is nice. They've been tested at 100,000 RPM as a maximum level, so that is really nice. With this running more air through the engine, you could do a couple of things. What I am going to try and do, haven't been done before I don't think, is I've got this little coupling here made for bigger water tanks. With this I'm going to drill a hole into my airbox, the bottom bit of it, stick this through. You've got two rubber seals here, and tighten it up. Oops. It's over there. Tighten it up, and that way I should have this more air being able to push through the engine, because that is a kind of bottleneck of it. You could do that, or you could get a Honda S2000 air filter that will plug straight into the intake pipe. You just have to take the sensor from the airbox and stick that into the filter as well. Drill a little hole and do that. But I'm going to try and do it this way and see how that turns out. I did order a plug here so I can plug it up if I'm going to go baiting or off-roading, but it seems that this plug I thought was the right one is just exactly the same size as the intake, so I have to get a bigger one of these. But then the plan is, if I need to go baiting or off-roading, I just take the plug over the hole, and then I can go off-roading and everything will be normal for the water depth that the car can handle. I'm gonna, with the engine oil, I've gone with a bit thicker one here, 5W40 from Castrol, turbo diesel. The other one I've got in now is a stock one, 5W30 I think it is, but it's running a bit low on oil pressure at idle, so I'm gonna go a tiny bit thicker, although it's very hot right now as well. Other than that, I'll be fitting a new downpipe to it as well. The old one is rattling against the sump, which is really annoying sound, so, and it is 20 years old, so fitting a new stainless steel one. So plan of action now is undo the bolts, the back of the turbo here to the downpipe, take the downpipe off and down onto the ground. After that, take the turbo out, means disconnecting all the hoses and stuff. Luckily, I just fitted a new engine to it, or had the engine out, did all the service parts, and I did also have the intake off and everything, or the exhaust manifold off. So that means all the bolts are quite easy to get to and shouldn't be stuck at all. Get those out, then we have to take the rotating oil filter out, which sets this filter in it. Quite easy to do, it's about 5 bolts in total, 2 at the bottom, 5 at the top. Take those out so we can fit this new oil feed pipe onto it. Then it's just a question about fitting the turbo, fitting the new sensor, and getting the map loaded onto the ECU through Storm Tuning. I'm going to use my nanocom to do that. I'm going to show you how it's done. So, without more talking or anything, I think the exhaust should be cold enough now to start messing with. We're going to have a look, otherwise I'll be waiting a bit to do it. But otherwise we should get cracking. So we got the one side of the downpipe off, but as in right now, yep, turbo's still hot. So we're gonna start off by taking the airbox out, doing all the hoses here, all the way onto the turbo, which means the cold side here, which is not hot anymore. Then we'll do the downpipe at the end, those two out, the feed and the oil return line, and then the turbo should be coming out. So turbo is now out, same as the downpipe, which is over here. Got a brand new one, stainless steel, just painted the flanges with some heat-proof paint just to make sure they don't rust. Just around the edge there, and all the joints here, otherwise looking really nice. Just completely standard terra firma downpipe. Right, so turbo is out. What I had to do now is get the oil filter off, and I've got the centrifugal filter out. I just need to get the whole casing here to move out. With that, we have got 2 bolts down here, 10mm, and then we've got one that just access through this hole here, the air conditioning. Get down there, release those. I've already undone the 2. They're down on the sump, just small 8mm ones. I have to seal up afterwards. Once that is, the whole purpose of it is to get that one out, which is the oil feed banjo, because that will be replaced with a longer one. Other than that, small problem I think. Got the old turbo there, new one. This is my sump plug. As you can see, it's a very weird sump plug, but this previous owner's work. But there's a small crack of the bottom bit of it up here. So now I just fill it with oil. I want to see if it starts seeping out. Otherwise I have to figure out some way to fix that. But as right now, it looks quite dry, which is good. So we're just going to let that be for about an hour and see if it starts coming through. So, oil filter out, centrifugal filter housing out, and all that. We'll go over on the table and have a look at the old and new turbo and what the main differences are, as I can point them out directly. So I've got the new pipe in place here, oil feed pipe. I just took the old raggedy heat protection thing over it, otherwise it's nice and braided. Put that on, use 2 new crush washers. They're not in the kit. I would strongly recommend whoever making this kit to supply them. Luckily we are using quite a lot of those here in the farm, so we got plenty of them found to the fit. Now I need to put the new filters in, which is here. A nice little trick for it. When you use your normal oil filter here, take the small one, because they'll fit between the drain pipe and the turbo. Otherwise you have to take the drain pipe off, and that is the worst 2 8mm bolts on the whole car, or the engine at least. They are absolute pain in the ass, and I really hope for I could get the my new drain pipe home, but I couldn't from Pioneer 4x4. They make one with an AN fitting, so you simply just unscrew it from like this section here is made up into 2 bits, so just unscrew it here and you can take the whole thing out. And the flange here is also a lot thicker, but that'll be a headache for about an hour's time for me to get those on. So here we got the 2 turbos out of the car. As you can see, they look quite similar. It's a bit bigger, this guy, compared to the stock one, but other than that, it just looks like a new version of it. The main difference here, being a VGT, a VNT turbo, is, as you can see, the wastegate actuator sits on top, where this guy sits pointing at the front, towards the front here, compared to this guy. That's the main focus on seeing it's a VGT, a VNT, where this actuator opens up a wastegate. There's an internal wastegate, so when pressure gets too high in here, it pushes on this rod, which then opens a small gap in between, which bypasses the hot side of the turbo. That means it's not spinning as much, and that way keeping the boost levels down. This guy haven't got any of that. It then does it through opening and closing these veins inside, so actually rotating, and that way it differs the geometry inside of the turbo, kind of these nozzles turning them, and that way you can depend on getting the maximum boost at low RPM and all the way up to maximum, as then the veins open up, and that way the internal parts of it gets bigger, and that way the pressure drops, but still keeping the turbine going around, so there's no bypassing in it. That also means they're quite hard to set up, so you definitely need to get a custom tune with it and making sure you're running the correct boost pressure. So I would recommend getting a boost gauge, running one of these, so you can see you're not over boosting at any point. At least get a light turning on if as a warning. But other than that, pretty standard. They're looking quite nicely the same, both size-wise, and everything should just fit up correctly. Of course, got the new feed pipe going in here. So the turbo is now in. It's about an hour and 30 minutes later. Again, the oil drain, absolute pain in the ass. First I tried it with the drain pipe on, didn't work, took the drain pipe off, put the 2 bolts onto the turbo, lowered the turbo in, and tried to screw it in on the other side of the block, which then resulted in me having absolutely no skin on my thumb left, so I can't unlock my phone now. That didn't work. Took it back off again, then the drain pipe went there, then it went over there, and then under that table. I don't know how it went over there, but it did. Picked it up again, cleaned it, went ahead and got it into the block without the turbo on, and then the turbo onto the drain pipe. Absolutely pain in the ass to do, but it is done. I've got the feed pipe on as well. I don't quite get why it has to be that long. It's kind of making a small little kink here as it's running down. But it was supplied with it, so I went ahead and fitted that. Had to take the wastegate off to get to the 14 bolt banjo bolt here. I had to use my old one as none was supplied in the kit. So that is actually good to go now. I could actually start the car up. Of course I need oil in it and stuff, but I think I'll go ahead and do the Airbox modification now as the next one, which should actually be the last project before we start assembling and putting oil back into it. I've now just made a hole here through the box, put the thing in. I had to take a bit of the riveling thing around here, which is just added for strength. I had to take a bit of that off, both from the outside and the inside, and then I can only run these performance air filters, as the standard paper filters will go too far into the box and then they will foul on that bit here. Again, we've got a rubber ring on each side. It's not 100% waterproof, but it's definitely splash proof. Now I just need a cap to put over it, but other than that I'm quite happy. That means I can suck air in through here and suck air in through here, so the turbo should be filled with enough air. So next up, installing this and then doing all the plumbing and adding oil, and then the first startup, and then hopefully Daniel should be done and shipping me the map for the car. The exhaust now is on. I've filled it up with oil, nothing is leaking, that is good. For now, we need to start him up first. I disconnected the injector loom down here so we can crank it for a couple of seconds, hopefully get some oil pressure. And check the oil level. And then we'll go ahead and try and start him up. Let's see. Cranking. Oil pressure lights out. Just before run off battery. Do that. And I'll check the oil. Everything seems to be good. We've got oil pressure, we've got plenty of oil in it. Time to start them up and just have a look for leaks, definitely in this area where I've had lots of oil pipes disconnected, just to make sure we're not throwing oil everywhere. Let's see if he wants to start. Of course he wants to start. There we go. And we are at 3.6 bars of oil pressure, which is very nice. Let's go and have a look for leaks. It is now quite late on the day, just need to do the final touch up. I'm having a slight leak from the turbo drain, but I'm not doing anything about it, just have to drip a bit of oil because I'm not touching that again. Absolute nightmare to do. One thing left to do is get the storm tuning map from Daniel onto the ECU using my nanocom. I've got my SD card plug in here. I have to go through 8 different SD cards to find one that actually work with it, which is an 8GB. Quite old one as well. Otherwise I was told that the SD, HC and whatever they're called doesn't work. You just need a standard SD card which comes up to 4GB. So I've ordered one of those just to be sure if anything goes wrong. Now I'm driving a Discovery 2, let's click on that. Driving it TD5. Should be coming one that says TD5 map. Click on that one. I've got the ignition on right now. Right tuning to ECU, I don't know if that is necessary. We'll have a different kind of files here. We'll take that one, which is the one I need. Press OK. Now it's erasing the old map. I'm copying the map to flash. Verifying checksum. Write the map to the ECU. OK. Turn the ignition on. Already got that. Working. Turn the ignition off. Let's do that. Ignition is now off. OK. Please wait 15 seconds. Let's do that. Turn the ignition to on. Go. OK. Byte written. Now I just have to go all the way up and we should be in business. Alright, so we are now in the car. It has been remapped. Just did the oil drain again this morning, just because it was still leaking and I couldn't bear to look at it. So got the bolts out. Luckily they came in quite easily back in again. But for now, gonna go out for a quick drive, see what the reaction is. As in driving it right now, I know what yourself, but it is just like a standard car. It starts off, it sounds the same, and nothing really changed on that front, but I think we need to get up a bit higher speeds and the acceleration should be really good now that we've got the boost kicking in at very low RPMs compared to before, and we should also be seeing higher boost levels of about 1.6 bars of boost. I've got my boost gauge right underneath the GoPro here, and I've got oil pressure gauge, and right now we are reading at about 2.5 bars of oil pressure and 0 turbo at 0.1 at 1000 RPM, which should be quite nice. So let's just go up and get on the road. Right. Speed limit, speed limit, speed limit. Oh, you can actually hear the turbo whooshing about. Alright, we're now in fourth gear. We're going uphill, quite a steep hill. And it's just pulling, keeps pulling, 1.2. 1.4, keeps pulling, fourth gear, up a steep hill. Oh, I think Daniel's done it again. got the speed even though this car is 20 years old. It's actually pulling really, really nicely now. Holy cow. It's just hard to put words on really. It's just, it pulls now. It wasn't on purpose, but I can definitely hear the turbo now that I've kind of pointed the hole from the airbox directly towards the cabin now. So it's quite clearly whenever the turbo is spooling up, which is quite nice. And I'm getting no smoke whatsoever from the exhaust, just like a standard map really. Yeah, we're hitting 1.6 bars of boost. Absolutely no problem whatsoever. So guys, it's gonna be a handheld one from here. But I think the next step now should be getting Liam into this car and probably driving it just so we can see his reaction as well, as he's normally used to be driving a stage 2 car. Of course I've gone to complete the stock car to a stage 3, so it'll be quite interesting to see what Liam's reaction is to it. But right now I have to go on holiday. I've got about 30 seconds to get home and dressed and pack the car, and then we need to go around Denmark for a quick road trip around. But then when I get back I will get Liam into the car and have a quick go at it. But for you of course it'll just be a blink of an eye and we'll see Liam there, so I'll see you there. I've covered about 1,300 kilometers. It still works, it's just confused about what speed we're going at. So if you do cornering really fast, it goes like, where are we at?